Hello, welcome to the NourishCaveman.com, where Vivica Menegaz, certified technician in whole foods nutrition, presents Nutrition in the Kitchen.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vivica. How you doing today? I am so excited to start my interview series again here after the remodeling of the website, and it's time to start again. I'm excited to bring you some really interesting people with some great experiences and point of views and a world of expertise about ketogenic diet, keto lifestyle, especially keto paleo, and especially for women. So today I'm excited to bring you a wonderful guest, is Dr. Lisa. And Dr. Lisa is a passionate wellness advocate. She has a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Science and is a graduate of Palmer College of Chiropractic. She also has a postgraduate work in both chiropractic wellness and pediatrics. And she's a board-certified naturopath. She founded the American Institute of a Healthy Living in 2017. So this is to create a place for general consumer to learn simple and sustainable steps to create lifelong healthy habits. Also, she coordinated the Keto 101 Virtual Summit, which is launching on April 24th. So coming up very soon. And I am a speaker in the summit. I am really excited to welcome you, Dr. Lisa. How are you doing today? Welcome.
I am doing great. Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So we, Dr. Lisa and I, we had a previous interview for the Keto Summit 101, and we discovered that we have a lot of ideas in common and we're very, our experiences and our views on the ketogenic diet and the keto lifestyle are very similar. So I was excited to pick a professional's brain, not only a chiropractor and a naturopath, is amazing. So I have a specific topic that I kind of want to tackle today, but I want to hear a little bit about your experience with the ketogenic diet and see how it's been for you and the benefits that you got from doing keto, how long you've done keto, what kind of keto you do, and tell us a little bit about that to start.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things because I've been talking with my patients a lot recently and they're like, well, you've always, taught a paleo nutrition plan in the office. And we always, I've been teaching that since 2005 before paleo was even a cool term. Right. Mm-hmm. But we always taught our patients, let's look at our ancestors, right? Because we know, Paleolithic man lived to be pretty long, but he had long active lives unless he was eaten by a bear or something, right? So let's mimic what they used to do. And so we would always teach our patients, lots of good proteins, lots of good fats, very minimal carbohydrates, right? And so that was where I stemmed there. And so I always told our patients we were doing a low carb paleo plan, but I never told them we were doing keto because back in 2005, had we said the word keto, people automatically would have thought Atkins, right? Because that's just what it was. So literally that's what we've always been teaching people was lower carb paleo. And so that's how I have been, gosh, how many years is that? Almost, well over a decade. So looking at 13 years. And so what had happened for me several years ago, I got really frustrated because even though I wasn't eating sugar and I was eating impeccable and I was working out 5 days a week, I was doing CrossFit, I was struggling with my weight. I was having heart issues trying just to stay at a size 12. So I, got online, started searching a bunch of stuff and started reading about intermittent fasting. So I started seeing that and I was following a bunch of male bloggers at that time because that's who it was that was talking about it. And I did it. I did a really strict form of it and we can dig into that later. But I did it. I lost weight, but I lost my health. And I dug and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it started again. I just had to go back to innately what I've been taught as a chiropractor, as a naturopath, how your body adapts. And that's what I realized, intermittent fasting is amazing for certain people, i.e. men, and for women, we just need to tweak it a little bit. And so we see that now, especially where there are female bloggers. You were one of them. I think that's how I initially found you, was as I just started trying to search, because I was like, there's something going on different here with women, but nobody's talking about it. So that was my story. So even now, I'm very much, I follow a paleo keto plan, because there's certain things that traditional keto diets are going to load up on a lot of dairy. And I don't do tons of dairy. It just is something I don't feel as if we're all baby cows, right? Like, and that's literally, cow's milk is there for a baby cow to grow really, really big, really, really fast. And, one of my, my chiropractic wellness diplomate that I did was with, I guess chiropractic, it was a diplomate program. I never sat for the diplomate test, but went through all the classes, was with Dr. James Chestnut. And so people would be like, well, what about almond milk? Or what about soy milk? And he's like, are you a baby soy? Or are you a baby almond? Like, let's go back to it. So, I mean, there are places for almond milk, not soy milk, not at all. You and I probably follow that, Yeah. But, I'm just not a huge dairy fan.
Yeah.
Especially about dairy, I should clarify.
I love that you use exactly the same analogy that I give my patients and my listeners and readers, because yes, milk is designed to grow a really large animal into that big animal. And it's not just about, we can really get into the dairy thing, but it's not just about the toxins, it's not just about the stress hormones of the cow, it's not just about the antibiotics and whatever is in conventional dairy, it's not just about the pasteurization. I mean, there is a long list of reasons why we shouldn't do dairy. And, the natural hormones contained in the milk to grow that baby animal into a really big, healthy animal that are perfectly appropriate for that animal, they just interfere with our own delicate hormone balance. And maybe is also why men do a little better with dairy, even though the long list is still there, but for women, and especially women at a certain age, when things start getting more delicate, I think past 40 years old, when you start signing up for perimenopause, that anything that interferes with your hormone balance, it's definitely, it's not ideal. It's not good. It's a dangerous game. And I'm really like focused on adrenal and hormonal balance in my practice. And I know that we just have a lot of experiences in common. And is what I find really beautiful, Lisa, is that, we never talked before we met the first time, but, coming from very different experiences in different places, but in clinical practice with real patients, we came to exactly the same conclusions.
Yeah.
And I'm not a doctor, I'm just a nutritionist, but I still, this is what I learn and this is what I see every day.
Right. And so, when you put it in perspective with people, I always tell people, like, what other mammal drinks the milk of another mammal? Like, when you start thinking of, you don't see that, right? So when it's like, okay, so why, I don't know. And you look at newborn babies and it's amazing. Like, breastfeeding is awesome, but it's there to help them develop. And so just put it back into perspective as to why things are happening the way that they do. So.
Exactly. And I think, I'm sorry, but, I know we have a certain topic in mind, but this is just too good to pass up. So
you're fine. That's how I roll. Let's just see what innately.
Yeah, we're just flowing with it over here. And we have both been we just came exactly along the same path by doing paleo, and then seeing that paleo needed to go further because it wasn't quite resolving all the health issues that we found with ourselves, our own personal experience, and then our patients as well. So that's why we came into ketogenic from the paleo approach. But I think that paleo goes well beyond no dairy, and I'm a really big advocate of doing the opposite of what they now call lazy keto, when people just like eat whatever junk processed foods, anything, even McDonald's, and then call it keto, as long as it stays within their macros. And, I kind of live in this small world because I'm so busy all the time. So I have my patients, my practice, my studies, and the blog, and that's it pretty much. And when I look out there and what keto has become, and I'm sure that you know a lot more about it because organizing the summit, you have interviewed a lot of people and you have seen a lot of different varieties of opinions on how people do ketogenic. But I still think that we are very much aligned on the concept that ketogenic needs to be done a certain way when you really want to talk about health, about the basis for a healthy living, right, Lisa? How's that in your experience?
Oh, yes, for sure. So again, I'm always that person that looks at how does the body adapt? Because the body, and I tell all of our patients, like what you are right now is a perfect representation of every decision you've made throughout your life. Right? It's when people sit there, and my common line that you'll see a lot throughout the summit, and this is what I tell my patients, and I've told them, is nobody wakes up and says, I want to feel lousy in 10 years, in 15 years. I think I'm going to eat some bad food today, and I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to work out, and I'm going to get stressed out to the max. So that way, by the time I'm 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, I'm just miserable. But guess what? Everybody's doing it. Because people come into my practice, people come into yours saying, I don't know what happened. And so that's where I always look, like, how is our body adapting? And so that's why I just totally lost your question.
Well, that was pretty much the question, the influence of just doing the different kinds of keto, because keto is not the magic bullet. It's, a lot of people out there, they're just like, as long as I do keto, everything will go away. And I'm sure you get a lot of patients like this as well, that they think that they just want to do a ketogenic diet and then it will fix all their ailments if you can just nail the macros,
Right.
or just...
And that's where it is. And so like for me, I did what I wanted to do and I lost the weight, and it was great because people would be like, wow, you look awesome. But I was screaming on the inside because I just totally I knew I wasn't where I should be. But again, our society always looks at, what we weigh as to if you're healthy or not. And it's actually like, how is your body functioning, right? Like that's really, truly health. That's, as a chiropractor, that's what I tell people all the time. It's not the pain, it's how is your body functioning? Because we always know somebody who thought they were healthy and they dropped out of a heart attack, right? So for me, what I've had to do is to do some carb updates every once in a while. Some people would freak out when they heard that and say, whoa, wait a minute, why would you ever go over 20 grams of carbs? Or why would you ever, do 100 grams of carbs per day? But I also look at it, again, as our ancestors. There were time periods of feast and there were time periods of famine. And we know exactly, that's why, ketosis happens in our body, is for us to adapt in a time period of famine. But we also, if you're constantly in a famine time period, your body's going to adapt. That's why I always share with people, like, intermittent fasting is awesome, but if a lady's doing it, a cycling woman especially is doing it every single day for months on end, which is what I did, go back to how our ancestors were. Because what do you think innately happens in that body? That guy is fine. He's got his testosterone, but the woman in childbearing years, they literally, the body says, whoa, stop it, time out. She's in famine. There is no way we could ever grow a baby right now. We better mess up her hormones. And that's what happens innately to us, right? So intermittent fasting has its place, just not 7 days a week for weeks on end that turns into months on end. And so I see a lot of people saying, I'm going to start doing that 20 hours a day and I'm going to run this for the next 6 months. And I'm like, let's think again. Let's look at how your body would adapt.
Yeah. So in case you guys didn't get it by now, but this is kind of our secret, not so secret topic of the day. It's intermittent fasting. No, it wasn't secret. It's just, but we just jump right into it. And that's awesome. Because one of the reasons that I wanted to interview Dr. Lisa today and about intermittent fasting specifically is because during our previous conversation, it came up that she had this experience with it. And let's go back one step and tell us exactly what happened to you and what the cause is, like the whole progression, because I tell this to my patients and I'm a big advocate of doing intermittent fasting the right way when appropriate. But I had recently had an interview with a fellow practitioner who had a very different opinion about it, and it really pushes the agenda of intermittent fasting as kind of like the silver bullet solution for weight loss, and saying that as long as you do it properly, but even when done properly. So let's listen to Dr. Lisa and see what her experience was, because she is a doctor. She's a practitioner. She is really savvy and wise, and, still with all her knowledge, let's see what happened.
Yeah. So even, and it was me, right, just sitting there thinking, because I was, listening to everybody online. Like I said, a couple years ago, that's the only people that were talking about it, where I'm not going to name names, but they were all male bloggers. So I did strict. I mean, I didn't have my first meal until like 2-3 in the afternoon. And then I would have like a 4 to 6 hour window every single day that I was eating. But I did that, and I did it for 3 solid months. And so near the end of it, I could tell that something was off, and like the weight even kind of stalled coming off, but I had lost a chunk of weight with it. So even with that, it should have been a warning light to me to say, something's going on. Like you were losing weight, you stopped, you hit a plateau, like, but there were certain things that I could tell just hormonally wise, like I was exhausted. So let's look at adrenals, probably thyroid, all of that. The whole endocrine axis was totally that hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, adrenals, ovaries, everything. It all gets skewed, right? Especially when you're in that, because again, the body adapts, saying, stop it, wait a minute. She's in famine time period. And if she ever got pregnant, we couldn't sustain a pregnancy. We better make sure like these hormones get out of whack.
So let me ask you, sorry to interrupt you, just a clarification here. So did you have any hormonal issues before that?
Oh, I think I've always been having some sort of adrenal issues. I'm a small business owner, right?
That's right.
I'm a type A personality. So, and in all honesty, I think majority of America has got some sort of stress.
Right. So that's a good premise to make, that there are barely any people out there, especially women, that are not experiencing this kind of stress. Yeah. And so when you add on, like we already have all those different stressors on our body, like the toxins, the mental stress, the job, and then there is dieting up and down, and and then you introduce this other stressor to your adrenals. And then what happened to you?
Oh my gosh, I started losing hair by the handfuls. I was always a person that would lose hair a lot, but it got really bad to the point that, you start thinking like, oh my gosh, this can't last much longer. Just all sorts of stuff. My female hormones totally got off balance, completely got off balance. But it was the constant fatigue. Like I could tell that I was in severe adrenal fatigue, what, like the classic in art, what you would say is the orthostatic hypotension, but like going from, sitting to standing or laying to sitting, I would get dizzy, that type of stuff, to the point that I was like, oh, classic, like all of my indicators came up like, okay, I need to stop this.
Test, classic.
Yeah. So like everything I remember ever learning was like, check that box, check that. Yep. Totally have stressed out the adrenals to the max, which then, when the adrenals are off, that's when you set yourself up for thyroid issues, and you said everything, they're all connected. If one's out, something else has to pick up the slack. So that was for me. So I instantaneously.
So let me ask you something. Sorry, I'm interrupting you again, but this is really great information. And for the people who are going to watch this video, our listeners, like, aside from the adrenal index test, which is a saliva test, there are not really good ways for normal doctors, MDs. They don't even think that adrenal fatigue is real. But we know better from the holistic practitioner point of view. Of course, we know better, and we have to deal and treat our patients all the time. So what are, in your experience, like the signs? What is a list of signs that your adrenals are in trouble?
Oh my goodness. Right. So I think because like you just said, the medical community will look at it, and they look at it on the broad spectrum, like Cushing's or,
that's right.
Like they look and be like, oh, well, you don't have that. Well, no, like your adrenals, again, they're going to adapt with stress levels. And so I always tell people, think of it again, innately, and how our ancestors worked. When you have a cup of coffee, you think it's a cup of coffee, but all of a sudden it's spiking it tells your adrenals to, go on alert. And so your body innately thinks you're running from a bear. And my classic line is, I live an hour outside of Detroit. So that's what I get is Detroit news. People are like, don't you watch the news? I'm like, no, I don't watch the news, because if I turn that on first thing in the morning and I see about all the negativity that's happening in Detroit, my body is instantaneously in fight or flight mode. And I just watch the Detroit news, but innately my body's like, oh my gosh, there's a bear, run, get ready to be attacked, And so I don't need to set that up that way. Right. But those are some of the things. So classic thing, everybody has got some sort of stressors in their life, and your body doesn't recognize it like, oh, hey, the kids are screaming. Oh, hey, it's this. Innately, you're going into fight or flight mode. And so the symptoms of that, when you get really long, are going to be the fatigue and that type of stuff. But depending on what stage you're in, you could be just that person that's like, hey, I get a second wind at 10 o'clock at night. And you think that that's fine. But in reality, the cortisol levels, which is what is released with the adrenals, might be spiking at 10 o'clock at night instead of relaxing down like where they should be. So it could be a whole gamut of different symptoms that somebody might be experiencing. But I think just most people, unless you're really truly nourishing yourself and nourishing those adrenal glands, and even the amount of sugar that we consume as a typical American, that's going to stress out the body in a different way as well. I mean, I just went in 500 different tangents. I know that. But
no, this is all relevant to the topic, believe me. And I think, it gives people a better idea that, a lot of times we try, I've had a patient tell me recently, like a new patient, and she was like, when, I was getting more and more tired. And then my colleagues at work, they just told me, you need to drink more coffee. That's going to fix it. And that's kind of the Band-Aid approach, that, again, I'm sorry to say, but in the medical community, normal doctors, they have a lot of this Band-Aid approach where they're just like, oh yeah, just, take this pill, or drink more coffee, or like, oh, how about an antidepressant? You must be depressed. That's like the fix-it-all pill, right?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, the amount of times I hear that. Yeah, no.
Yes. So I know that we're talking about a lot of different facets, but this is all really about like what can happen to you if you don't do keto the right way, and if you don't listen, if you're not aware of the physiology, underlying physiology of your body. Because for me, my biggest thing that I try to communicate to people is that there is no one size fits all. And for certain things that might work, even in the ketogenic world, certain things might work for certain people. If you're a 30-year-old male bodybuilder, like, Keto King, that guy out there that is like pumping, at the gym all day long and like super muscles, and is like, my intermittent fasting and my coffee in the morning. He's younger, and he's a man, and he's a bodybuilder. So those are very different, specific, physiological types that we're talking about. But like for me and my audience, and like for you and probably most of your audience, which is mostly women, and for me also women who deal with things like perimenopause or hormonal issues, because that is what I do in my practice, So we see a very different scenario. And so tell us, what did you do to fix it then?
Oh my gosh.
That's a big thing. Let's
right.
That.
I actually started eating carbohydrates, right? So I did a couple of carb ups like that way. I wasn't completely.
And Lisa, sorry, I interrupted you again. What do you do for your carb ups? I'm sure that everybody is just sitting on the edge of the
These are my good carbs.
What do you eat for carb ups?
Like a sweet potato, right? So that's where I was talking with another one of our speakers for the Keto 101 Summit earlier today. And I told him too, I said, please clarify exactly, because people are going to say, oh my gosh, this is my free thing to be able to go and eat a massive pizza. No, it's not. Like, it's still your good quality foods. So like, I'll do a lot of sweet potatoes, or maybe even some berries, or, some lower glycemic fruits. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that. I actually upped my fat because I was doing keto, but I was doing like a lower keto. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So did a little bit more fat and just really started paying attention to nourishing. And so I went back to eating breakfast, and I did that for quite a while. And so it's only been recently, within like the last year, that I'll pull out like a 12-hour intermittent fast. And sometimes I'll push it out even longer than that. Like we had just shared earlier, I'll do longer fast time periods, but I seriously sat and nourished my body, nourish the cells for a good 6 months afterwards, just trying to re-heal my body.
Yeah. And I think that, so what I would like to make clear here for listeners and watchers, viewers, that there is a way that we can do some intermittent fasting for sure, but it needs to come with a solid base. And for me personally, the base is keto adaptation done the right way, which more and more, I've been doing keto for 5 years, and I've been using it in my practice for 5 years. And still to this day, I see more and more how tricky real keto adaptation is. And that's a whole other topic. We might touch on it briefly. But so proper keto adaptation. And the second thing is, if you have any hormonal issues, they need to be addressed, especially adrenals, sex hormones, and thyroid. You need to address those before you start intermittent fasting.
Yeah, and sometimes like people don't even realize that maybe their adrenal and thyroid issues coming from toxicity. You know, you can chase that stuff for a long time. So you really need to get those underlying issues addressed first.
Yes. And that there is not a quick fix to this. You know, it's something that is step by step, and it needs to be done pragmatically. Right.
Yes. Yes. And it's truly a lifestyle too. You know, I'll see so many people thinking that keto is such a quick fix for something, you know, thinking because everybody puts keto with weight loss and like, I'm just going to do this for 6 weeks and drop some weight. I'm like, why would you do that for 6 weeks? It would be like a smoker saying, I'm just going to quit smoking for 6 weeks. Then I'll go back to it. You know, it doesn't make any sense. And so it's one of those things like choose the lifestyle and to make sure that, you know, 10 years from now, again, life is a lot better than, you know, you don't want to be sicker. So.
Yeah. And actually, I want to go back for a second to that great kind of attitude that you have and what you tell your patients about their choices. And like, would you want to make the choices that make you sick? Because I see a lot of younger people, the ones that are doing lazy keto usually are younger people, you know, in their 20s and 30s. And I see, like nowadays, I see a lot of very young people, like in their 20s and 30s, that have major endocrine issues. So, you know, sex hormones, really bad periods, PCOS, you name it. So what would you say to those people? Like, do you have any advice? Because I know that I try to educate them, but do you deal with this kind of that kind of audience, and how do you educate them?
Yeah. And it is okay, because I feel like when we were all 20, we're like, you know, gosh, I thought my parents were old at 40. And now I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's nothing. Right. But we never think it's going to happen to us. But it is, like you just said, we have a whole generation of, when we even look at the younger kids that are so sick, they're probably not going to outlive their parents' life expectancy rate, like just because of the issues that they have going on. And so and I like your term of lazy keto, because, you know, that's like when we see the guides of how can you do keto by eating at fast food restaurants? And it's like, well, we're kind of missing the boat, right? So it's one of those things that, you know, we've got to realize that every single decision, and this again goes back to one of my mentors, he used to always say this is like a rock in your backpack. So if you imagine every single morning starting out in a swimming pool full of water with a backpack on, every decision we make throughout the day is a rock. And sometimes people choose things that are a boulder in their backpack. And I look at my patients and I say, if you're doing a boulder every single day, how long will you float? Like, let's be realistic. So yeah, lazy keto could be working for a little bit, but let's really tune in and look at that. And how long will you be floating? You might make it a little bit, but it's going to make quality of life at 50, 60, 70, 80 years old a whole lot better if you choose the right things now.
Yes. And I think I always call it like an investment. Like, that is the true health insurance, you know, like the whole system of health insurance in the United States is kind of a grim picture. And I always tell my patients, like, this is your investment in health insurance, that what's going to keep you healthy, not try to fix it when you're already sick and it's too late. Right.
And that's exactly it. When you talk to people that are like us, that are literally making really good choices in our food, and we're choosing, you know, really good stores to make sure we've got clean foods that we're eating, and, you know, whole nutritional foods, people are always like, gosh, it's so expensive to do that. But those dollars are not going to be spent on healthcare later on. And when you look at us, we don't have massive medical bills. Like, you know, so that's the thing. Like, not only am I not spending money in all of these crisis situations, I'm saving money in the long run. And plus my health will probably be a whole lot better at 65 than.
Yes. And your brain as well. Like,
yeah, I'll remember my name at 50. That's good, right?
I would like to preserve my brain.
Yeah.
So any tips or like anything you would like to share with our viewers about your way of doing keto in your practice, or like any juicy tips that you gleaned from the work that you do?
I think my biggest thing is because oftentimes people are like, you're just so overwhelming everybody with all of this stuff. And it's like, no, let's just take it back a step, because there are time periods that people walk into my practice as a new patient and they're like, I want to change everything. And I want to do this and I want to do this. And I'm like, let's just stop. Let's do one thing. Because if all you're going to do today is eat some spinach and you're going to do that for the rest of the year, that's the only change that you make, will you be healthier or sicker in a year? Right? So you probably can figure out by putting some good nutrients in, people will probably be a little bit healthier in a year. So it's the same type of thing. Let's do these in simple, sustainable steps. And so even if you're already doing keto, but you're doing, if you've got a lot of different foods, i.e., let's say dairy, what I would say is let's challenge it and let's start taking some of it out, because a lot of times people don't realize how it's such a high allergen food too. And maybe you'll see some different results with keto if you take dairy. Just take baby steps, because those baby steps are the things that will really, truly survive. And so that's my biggest thing, right? And don't give up on things. Like, always continue to push on. I don't even remember who told me this the other day, but I laughed and I thought it was so classic, because so often we'll try something. Oh, I tried keto once, it didn't work. Oh, I tried that, it didn't work. But, we do that as adults all the time. But what, is there ever an adult that looks at their newborn baby that's not newborn, but, like their 8-month-old that's starting to walk or attempting to walk and just saying, you know what, I don't think walking's their thing. They're not going to make it. They're falling too much, right? Like, none of us do that with our kids. Like, we want them to walk. And the same thing though, how come we don't allow us to, if we make some mistakes, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
you can be successful at keto. Like, just get back on the bike, start climbing the stairs or whatever it is again, because we would never tell our child, no, walking's not for you. You're going to crawl the rest of your life.
I know. No, that's a great analogy. Thank you, Lisa. I think it's really good. And I think I would like to take it wider, and like, it's not just keto, but as your health. Because I think that both Lisa and we have, our message here is really that keto is like one of the different facets that you can manage to get yourself healthy or stay healthy. For me, it's one of the foundational pillars of health, doing the right kind of ketogenic diet. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because nutrition is the foundation of your cells, right? And you probably get it all the time. I have no idea what your age is, but people will always look at me and they're like, you're how old? Like, what type of beauty cream do you use? And I'm like, well, let me tell you, anything that goes on its face is organic, but I'm like, it's the healthy fats in my diet, right? Like, that's the thing. So nutrition is so key. And if that's the only thing you're going to really do to switch things up, then look at what you're putting in your mouth, because it becomes you.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. And can you tell us just a tiny bit about the Keto Summit?
Yeah, so for sure.
On April 24th, right?
Yeah, it starts April 24th. It's a 3-day event. So it started in my mind about a couple years ago, trying to figure out how to help more people than those just within my practice. So the Keto 101 Summit is going to be a 3-day event. It is a virtual summit. So there's a lot of confusion. Do you find that? A lot of confusion with online stuff? People have asked me where they have to drive to for this event. They don't have to drive anywhere. Park your car in your garage, go over to your couch, turn on your iPad or, turn on your computer and watch some amazing speakers, i.e. Vivica. I don't know which side of the screen she's on, but she's one of our amazing speakers. So we've got, right now we've got 20 speakers, right? So if some people are jumping aboard, we might have more. I'm not sure where we're going to be at, but yeah, 20 or so April 24th to 27th, go to, you'll put the link where they can register.
Yes, there will be a link under the video for sure.
And so for 3 days, you can have access to all of these speakers. And what else I did, like I said, everything is in bite-sized chunks for me. So they're short presentations. They're not 2-hour long presentations, but they're like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. The longest one I have is an hour. But you can pick and choose who you want to learn from. And there's all, like you said, lots of different varying opinions on keto, but we've got a lot of different people in there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. And thank you for sharing your experience with you. And yes, good luck with everything. And we'll keep doing keto the right way, right?
Yes. Sounds great.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lisa.
Thank you.